Bienvenidos a un capítulo más de Diálogos Sensoriales. En esta ocasión seguimos navegando por la red hacia Estados Unidos y vamos a compartir una plática bastante interesante con Laure. ¿Es Laure o Lori? O ya nos va a especificar. Pero
Laure.
bueno, démosle la bienvenida. Thank you so much, Laure, for this
Mhm.
interview and welcome to Diálogos Sensoriales.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Okay, okay. So let's start with some feedback about you. How can you describe yourself in the sensory field? How you start working in this area? Tell us a little bit of you, please.
Yeah, so my background is French. So I had the pleasure to grow up in France. In France, food has always been a really important part of the culture. I was always interested in food from a kind of a young age. I love going to the farmer's market with my parents, going to the baker, the butcher, really, really interested in how things smells and tasted like, and really, was excited about quality of things in general. Um, but I didn't know much about sensory until I finished my undergrad. So I have a degree, an undergrad in biochemistry. And then at the end of my undergrad, I did an internship in a fruit and vegetable technical center, and they were studying peach
Oh, okay.
and different varieties of peaches. And this is where I got exposed to consumer research. And I was in the background preparing little pieces of peaches for consumers. And I thought, like, wow, it's amazing. Like, people get paid to give us some opinion about how things taste like. And then this is where I got exposed to collecting information, sensory information, chemistry, and then how
So,
we could link the two together. Our program in food science. And
nice.
so in that training, I could take a sensory science class. And so that was really exciting. And where I really found my passion was at the end of grad school. I got a chance to do an internship in Champagne area, so at Moët Chandon, to set up the descriptive program. And I already knew I really loved wine. I was really part of wine clubs and growing with a bottle of wine on the table.
Right.
And studying wine. And so I already knew that. But then I found my two passions. Like, my goodness, doing sensory relish in wine. What else? What else could be better than this?
Right, right.
So this is where I found my calling. Um, and then, yep.
Wow. Yeah, and nowadays you are working with something, well, which is very related with the beginning of sensory. I mean wine.
Hmm.
So at what time of your career you started working with wine in the sensory perspective? I mean.
So I started my career, right, with Champagne, putting the sensory program. So that kind of, this is my starting point. And then after a year, I had the opportunity to move to California to work for Gallo. And again, Gallo, the biggest winery in the world, now expanding to other product categories. At the time was the late 90s. And so at the time, they were setting up the sensory program. They had just started a research program, and they wanted to have sensory to support all the R&D work they were doing. They had hired another French person, Isabelle Leschavre, who you met already. Isabelle came from INRA Dijon, so, an amazing training in sensory. And then the two of us started the sensory program at Gallo. For me, it was just an amazing experience to start something from scratch and being able to convince to put it in place, to put the whole program in place, and then to prove the value of sensory and see, what else could we do with it.
Right.
And then I've been, I'm going to be celebrating my 22nd year at Gallo this year.
Wow, congrats.
So I did have a little break from wine at some point in time when I moved to Switzerland and worked on coffee for Nestle. So I stayed in the beverage category, another very complex beverage, really fun, very fun beverage to work with. with a lot of similarity with wine. But the bulk of my career has been on wine.
Wow, great.
Yeah.
But and it's the products which are very related to the sensory culture. I mean, at least with the tasters, the taster
Mm-hmm.
people who has deep studies and etc. How difficult was to share with the with that taster, that professional taster, and sensory evaluation?
Oh my God. Yeah, it's a great question. And you're totally right. I mean, especially in the 90s. I mean, I'm hoping that the culture and the industry has evolved in the last 30 years. But it's true when I started my career and it was same at Moët Chandon and it was at Gallo, there was a lot of, older men,
Right.
who've been in the industry for a very long time, right? And so arriving as a young woman,
Correct.
um, but I think, it's about collecting. So you need to have sponsors, right? Anywhere you go, you need to have at least a couple of people who believe in what you do, right?
Right.
And then you have to rely on these people to help you get there. And then we started collecting data. We in the beginning, if I think about what I've done at my channel or the beginning at Gallo, we didn't have that many resources for sensory. We had to prove that it was bringing something, right? So we started with internal panel. So we train employees. We after we set up the lab, we train employees. We started the program that way, and we started collecting data, and we started seeing, showing the relationship between experiments and then how it would translate in the wine,
Mhm,
and kind of explaining to different groups, okay, this is what we can do, this kind of information we can we can explain. And so by showing with data, that
right.
made sense, what that could bring. This is where kind of gradually you convince people that, hey, it brings something.
Uh-huh.
um and another thing that was quite striking when I started my career at Gallo was the power of the power of the individual,
Mhm.
right? You go, and at the time, marketing had a big say in how the wine should taste like, right? So you would go to tastings with the winemakers and the brand manager, and the brand manager would say, "Oh, I want this wine to taste like this." So
Right.
here we go. We would kind of make the wine based on the direction that the brand manager would have provided, right? And a couple of years later, the brand manager would be different, with a different
Absolutely.
opinion of how that wine should taste like. And then you're like, oh, well, no, the wine should taste like that. And so things would kind of, so, seeing this, be like, okay, but, they're not the people buying all the wines we make, consumers do. What
Right.
do they want? Right. And so by, again, working with the right people at the time, preference mapping started to be something that some folks
Really?
had heard
Yes.
about, were interested in. So we were able to conduct some research projects,
Mhm.
and then kind of show the value of that kind of work. And then kind of, slowly but truly kind of evolve to bigger and bigger programs,
Right.
to really now embed the consumer um, feedback into decision making. So it was a gradual steps. It didn't happen overnight. There was a lot of convincing to be done, and so people to understand that we have our own perception, we have
Uh-huh.
our own opinion, but at the end of the day, we're not the one who's going to buy all the wines we make. The one we make has to make sense for the consumers
Right.
or any product.
Right. In your opinion, what is the best part of doing your job? I mean, your sensory in your daily activities. What's the best part of that?
Ah, oh my gosh, there's so many of them. I think what drives me is just the connecting the dots. I think,
Okay.
deciphering information. Every time we do a study, I feel like we have a puzzle. It's a new puzzle to figure out, like what are those data telling us? What do they mean? How we put them in context of a bigger picture. I think sensory is has such a unique position in an industry or anywhere else. I feel like we are in the bridge or at the intersection of so many different things happening on the products, and we make a link between process, right? How a product is being made,
Right.
whatever the product is, right? How it is being made, um, um, how it tastes like, what are the other metrics against this product, whether it's physical, chemistry, or whatnot, right? And then how do we link it to consumer perception? How we could even link it to sales data, like we see, I feel like we're the kind of a hub or the intersection of all those different elements, and kind of able to kind of make sense. Okay, you if you change this, then this translates to that change in sensory profile, and that translates to that difference in consumer preference or consumer acceptance, and that might translate to a change of sales, right? Yeah, being able to connect all those dots, being able to bring objectivity to perception,
Yes.
and it helps people be on the same page about product perception and how we talk about products. So I feel like as a sensory scientist, our role is to really bring a lot of objectivity to decision making.
Right. So what's the not the biggest, but the nice changes we have in the sensory field? I mean, since the very first time you start doing this in this let's keep it in the wine if you or in the coffee field if you want. But how different are the things now?
Um, well, I can only speak for the places I've been,
I know, yes, yes, in
right?
your
I
opinion, of
don't,
course,
I'm
yes.
not sure I want to generalize my experience with the rest of the industry. Um, but I mean, I think at Gallo we went from internal panel, smaller, more focused,
Mhm.
more singular, research questions, to building a program with external panelists. When I think when the company realized the power of the tool, right, they were willing to invest in the science, and so this is where we got more funding to have external panels, to have bigger rooms, um, to collect more types of data. And so for us, it evolved from being focusing on research and being purely sensory focused to being consumer focused, and always bringing the consumer piece into the decision making. So that translated into doing more research studies on categories of products, really have the foundation, the understanding of what consumers preferred, or what drove the liking of the different groups of consumers, right? And how, by understanding the sensory components that were key to the different groups of consumers, how could we make products that respond to those expectations, and really build a program and drive the the strategy of the portfolio, right,
Right,
on that sensorial foundation.
right,
And to me, that's something that we have been able to implement for quite a few years now, but it's very solid. And so yes, we have question that could be more specific to a brand or more specific to a varietal, but we kind of based all our work from that foundational understanding of the category and what matters
right.
to consumers.
Nice.
To me, it's been really powerful.
Well, I was saying about that experience of the differences. I asked that because for my side, I mean, I am a neophyte on this, but wine is like a very complex product. It's like a
Hmm.
magical product in some ways. So
Very emotional. Hmm.
yes, so I always hear about this is the best wine or that is not as good as whatever. how difficult is to express in a sensory way that
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. I don't know. That's my question. Just enjoy it, or what's the best thing or the good way to describe a wine for a consumer? I mean,
Oh gosh, yeah. Okay, that yeah, you're talking my language here. That's like one of my crusades. Um, again, I think we rely a lot on the power of data, right? Because I can have an opinion, you can have an opinion. People have been in the field have been kind of really much have a strong emotional tie to the product, like wine. Like, I think all winemakers, hopefully, they love the product they make. They have a lot of pride into it.
Mhm.
And then, as you said, in the wine category, is can be influenced by critics. You see the romantic language
Right.
that the critics use to describe wine, but is it really what consumers understand,
Okay.
right? And I can tell you the answer is, for most of the case, it's not it.
Okay.
I mean, there are consumers who are really into the category. They've invested, and yes, you can talk a very sophisticated language with them,
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
right? But for most consumers who want to enjoy wines, I mean, wine is so intimidating as a category.
Correct.
I mean, think about choosing a bottle. Like
Yes.
you go to the wine aisle and you're in front of 1,000 options. Like, think about any other product category where you're in front of so many options, right? There's
Yes.
none. So, and how do you choose? Like, how do you know how they taste like? How do you know what's good for you? Right.
Correct.
So we as a category have a lot to do to make that shopping experience a lot better, a lot easier for the consumers, and a lot more relevant.
Yes.
And so, um, you know, and it comes to, how do you convince a winemaker to make wine that is probably not going to be to his or her liking, but it's going to be more, more tuned to what the consumers is looking for. And this is where the data is coming into play, right? When we do studies, choosing a consumer profile is critical. You need to understand who you need to talk to, which consumer group is going to make sense for your business. So knowing that is really important. And so in wine, we tend to look at winemaker. I mean, I'm sorry, at consumers who may be diverse from their social demographic standpoint, from the price point of the purchase. And so you can include in your studies consumers who can drink a $5 or $10 bottle of wine, up to consumers who drink $20 to $30 bottle of wine, and see, right, if they like different things,
Right.
right? And then you expose them to a broad array of wines, which could be from, again, a $5 to $10 bottle of wine to a $50 or $100 bottle of wine, with different sensory components. Collecting this data in a blind environment helps kind of, strip all those biases out of, what really matters from a sensorial standpoint.
Right.
So if you get rid of the brand name, if you get rid of the product, of the price point, you can really focus on the sensory components. And then you can see what your consumers like. And we know people don't like the same thing. So it's been very easy to show that if you're looking at it purely from a consumer liking standpoint, you'll get different group of people who like
Right.
different things,
Mhm.
right? And then bringing the sensory component to this piece, you explain what are the sensory attributes, the objective sensory attributes that are driving the liking of those different groups.
Right.
Right? And then you can see from those groups who are in those groups, are all my luxury consumers, people who drink that those 20, 30, $50 bottle of wine, do they all fall in the same liking group, or they all scattered? And I can tell you, usually they're scattered, because
Of course. Yeah.
you like what you like, right?
Yeah.
So by showing the data, you know, um, you can convince your organization, your product makers, your brand people to really go after different styles, and you can really think strategically about your portfolio. And that's how we were able to convince our partners that, yes, you may have your own liking, and you may love to make that style of wine, and that's okay. This consumer group likes that style of wine too, and also make wines for those other consumer groups who have other different likings. So that's one piece of it, and then the other piece is how we communicate to the consumers about those different styles. So
Yes.
and that again, it's with data. It's by exposing different styles to consumers,
Mhm.
understanding the sensory or the communication cues that matters to them, what words resonate to them, what what cues are going to be best fitted a specific style that is liked by consumers, and how we can use that in the back end. So stay tuned on that one. Hopefully in a year or two we can talk more about this.
Yes, it's
So I have more exciting news to share on this topic.
no, it's
Yeah.
it's nice. Yes, I know, no, no, no. It's interesting always learn about wine, no? Especially in your case because you came from France, where it's a country very well, like let's say, structure in the wine evolution.
Mhm.
And now that you are working in the US, in a country that is developing, at the time you arrived there, I mean, they
Right.
start developing, they start with this wine wheel and etc. And how do you feel about that? That you are growing with the let's say sensory wine experience as well. So
Yeah.
it's how
I
do you
think,
feel?
yeah, I mean, growing up, and especially from a French perspective,
Mhm.
and I'm kind of reflecting to a conversation I could have with my dad, for example, who loves wine. For him, like, wine is there, and you as a consumer have to go to the product,
Mhm.
right? You have to understand what it's all about. You have to make the journey. Whereas I would argue that the consumers are the consumers. The consumers make the choice.
Right.
Any product should make the journey to the consumer,
Hmm. Okay. Right.
right? So it's a different mindset, and I don't think one is any different from any other. As any other product, they have a job to fulfill,
Mhm.
right? Hopefully, in the case of wine, it's enjoyment, it's sensual pleasure, it's providing, playing a role in social contacts, or what have you, right?
Right.
But the wine has to please the consumer. It's
Yes.
it's
Yes.
it's not the person's fault if they don't like the wine.
Right.
I am, completely convinced of that. We have our different styles. It's okay to like sweet wine. It's okay to like cheap wine. I mean, good for you.
Right.
No
Yes.
money in your wallet if you like something that's expensive. Because honestly, a lot of cheap wines can be really pleasant. They're less complex. They make more food forward. They're more approachable,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, yeah, I've definitely, like, what you're right in what you like.
Right. Okay. I was about to ask, so in your opinion, what is or which is the best wine
For me,
in general? Well,
oh
yeah,
my gosh, that's a question. So see, that's a question I cannot answer for
I
everything
know.
I've
That's
said.
why I asked you.
The best one is the wine that probably would please most people. You know, the
Yes.
best one would be a wine that could be liked by as many people as possible. That could be affordable by as many
Uh-huh.
people as possible. Um, yeah, to me, that's kind of the best wine out there. You know,
Yes,
may
yes.
not be the one I prefer myself, but if I think kind of holistically, yeah,
Yeah, there are many choices. I mean, first you have white bread, and then you have different
hmm
type of grapes, and then the years, and then the type of bottle, and the, you have like almost a factorial experiment in the
for sure.
in these options. So it's
Yeah,
difficult. I mean, there's I don't know how people can try all the wines or the styles. I think it's impossible, right? Because just a small amount of whatever ingredient can change the
totally.
final product. So it's
Right.
it's 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 nice. I mean, I love the. I never been into the wine sensory field as a sensory scientist. Of course, in the part of consumer, I am a very nice. subject to be experimented because I love red wine a lot.
Hmm.
So it's amazing how the sensory field can embrace all the different part of the procedure. I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean, yeah, it is a complex product, requires a complex language, but all wines can be structured kind of in
right?
a way that makes sense, right? You have like the fruit buckets and then the green buckets and the spice buckets and the mouthfeel components. You find them across the board, between reds and whites and rosés, and they have
Roses
their,
as well.
you know, there some of the nuances of differences, but I think you can really look at it from a very holistic standpoint, and even like make link with other beverages in the
Right.
category. Um, because like consumers that don't, it's rare that they're just like one one consumers. They can be consuming wine and beer and cocktails and spirits, and so like you can think
Yes.
about looking at things from even more like a more holistic point of view and understand like what is different, what is similar to those different beverage categories. How do we understand why people drink what they drink? How do we innovate? Are there blind spots in between those categories that we can explore, right?
Yes.
So
Oof, oof, interesting. Okay. Let's go back a step. You mentioned that you did your sensory, let's say, experience during one internship or not during your let's say faculty, but who inspired you to continue into the sensory field, or who invites you to enter into this field?
I go back to my experience at Moët Chandon in Champagne area for my grad school internship, where I stayed another 6 months. So I stayed a whole year there. Um, I didn't really have a whole lot of mentorship when I
Okay.
was there because nobody was expert in sensory. Uh, uh, but so I was reading a lot of books. I was, reading articles. I had my classes, my,
Right.
my training from grad school. I took a class in sensory, so I had some background, and I tried to educate myself as much as possible. But I just love the work, working with the panel, um, teaching, how to recognize the different sensorial perceptions,
Mhm.
collecting the data, seeing what it looks like, communicating with my partners on results. Like I just felt like I wanted more of it, right?
Okay.
Um, and but then I was looking for an experience abroad, so it brought me to Gallo, and I think like starting everything from scratch was something that was just invaluable. And I was also at the time early in my career, I was super fortunate to be surrounded by people who really were very knowledgeable about sensory. So starting with Isabelle Deschamps, when we put the sensory group together, and then after she left, I had a chance to work with Al McPhee and Jackie Buckley, and then Gail Seville. Like, I got a chance to be surrounded by all these amazing, all these amazing people in my career, and really learn from them. Pascal Schlich, so from a statistician's point of view and from a business point of view, and so I don't know. It felt, I never really thought I'll be doing something else. To be frank, it just felt like I fit. This is where I wanted to be and stay.
Right. Yeah, that feeling is for many people. They if you love sensory, you really love sensory. I mean, there is no
Right,
okay, I can do it. No, that people normally don't stay a lot of time into sensory. It's
right.
like I love or I don't love it. Maybe I hate it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting. So it's nice. Thank you for sharing this emotional part of your life because I think it's emotional and
Mm-hmm.
I can take this you like a lot the challenges so that's why you are well you learn sensory from scratch you work with you like to connect the dots because of this field of crazy variables and etc. So it's nice. I am amazed and overwhelmed about the different stuff you
Yeah.
have mentioned, the statistical part.
Yeah. And I think another thing about sensory, what's to me a good challenge is because we collect complex data, right?
Right.
It's especially on a product like one, and I know for a lot of people out there, it's probably the same, right?
Yes. Yes.
And how do you talk about the information? Like, how do you translate your information? How do you pass it on to your colleagues, whether they are the technical colleagues, the developers, the makers, the process technology folks, or whether they are the brand folks or other folks? So how do you tailor your message? What kind of information do you provide? How do you provide information? And I think that kind of a challenge that we have as sensory scientists, I think, because we tend to be very nerdy. I can speak for myself. We love data, we love the maps and we love to look at things. We're used to looking at even like line graphs or other kinds of visuals. Like for us, they're easy to understand because we live and breathe them. But like,
Correct.
do they really, are they that easy to understand from our partners? Like, how do we dial down the information and talk about what's important for them? What's in it for the others, right? And to me, that's still a crusade in my
Yes.
career, figuring out, how to best translate information to the partner so that they really get it and they review.
Yes, and nowadays with the merge with the consumer insights and etc., all that, let's say, marketing field, explaining a map with dots and squares and
Mhm.
lines sometimes is very challenging as well. So nice, nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, I mean,
Okay.
to all the sensory scientists, yeah, sorry. It's like,
No, no,
it's really
no.
about like, what's needed for them? What information do they need to know?
Right.
Right.
Yes, that's a good question. Yes. Yes. Interesting. Thank you. Okay, let's move a little bit with another part of the interview where I will ask you some comparative questions. So please let me know
Oh,
which one do you prefer.
okay. I'm
Eh,
an and person, so you might not like all my answers, but let's go.
okay, let's start with an easy one, I guess.
Okay.
Croque Madame or Croque Monsieur?
Fuck monsieur.
Okay.
Traditional.
Eh, red wine or white wine?
Oh, that's the hot question.
I know.
Okay. All of the above as long as it's not Oki Chardonnay.
Okay, interesting. Okay, okay, okay. Um, well, this question I will leave at the end. Okay.
Okay.
Tetra testing or triangle testing?
So they're both great tests. I think tetrad is more robust. It helps you go to the information with less panelists. So depending on your resources, I think tetrad now is maybe a bit more recommended than triangle. Um, but yeah, they're both great tests.
City or forest?
City with a lot of greens and parks.
Okay.
Yeah, you can take that.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned city. Okay. Traditional descriptive analysis or rapid methods?
I'll go for traditional because traditional descriptive analysis can be very rapid. If you set your panel right, if you have your list of attributes, if the hard part is to invest on your panel and it is and then defining your language and your scales. But once you have that done, you can go so fast,
Right.
right? Rapid analysis that may appear to be saving time, and they have a place to play, but then the analysis of it is really complicated, right? And how you do translate this information to your partners, how you use to communicating with them, and then you should change your way of communication, like how, what's in it for the others. So I'll say definitely traditional methods.
Yes. Okay. Analytical or consumer testing?
Both. I mean, what do you mean
Uh,
by analytical?
in general, I like a triangle test or maybe
Oh,
a descriptive
descriptive
analysis.
analysis?
Yes, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's like a general question.
Okay. If I had to pick one, I would probably say, I mean, I don't think you can do consumer without analytical
Uh-huh. Yeah, of
because,
course.
you know, in my, at least in the field I've worked with, like consumers cannot tell you why. They not cannot
Yes.
tell you why they like certain things in a way that I can provide information and pass it on to the product developers.
Yeah.
So I would say if I had to pick, I would probably do analytical and then use my consumer knowledge to fill the blanks.
Yeah, like a combination of both.
Right.
Well, depending of the objective, of course. Okay. Parametric or non-parametric statistics?
Parametric.
Crème brûlée or crepes?
Perhaps, well, I'm from Brittany, more
Ah,
pragmatic, so I have to go with crepes,
okay,
but
okay,
I recommend both.
okay. Preference mapping or PLS?
Ugh. Um, I mean, you know, they're both wonderful methodologies. I'll say if you have the statistics, if you work with statisticians who can really push the understanding of your results in a way that you can be more granular and have more understand the quadratic effects and all those things, I would say yes, do PLS, right? But if you do it on your own and if you rely on softwares that can only get you so far, like PerfMap is fine too.
That's like
Yeah,
two levels of
yeah. I mean, it's
statistical use.
right. Yeah.
Okay. The final one, you can skip it if you want it, but French wines or Californian wines?
um, I'll go French wines. Yeah. I mean, there are California wines that are really, really nice. I drink more California wines than French wines these days. That makes sense.
Yes.
That said, that little Sancerre or that little Chablis,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your answers. Okay, let's move to the final part of the interview. And I can speak a lot. I can learn from you a lot, but we have limited time.
Mhm.
So, in your opinion, what will be let's say, the minimum skills that a sensory scientist must have in order to work into the sensory field in wine, for example?
Okay, I think first and foremost, uh, that person needs to have a very strong interest in the product.
Mhm.
You can, in my mind, you cannot be a good sensory scientist if you don't start by showing a very strong interest in a product. It requires to taste a lot to 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 really understand the product deeply. Right. So for any sensory scientist, I would strongly recommend against working on a product that you don't really care for, because you cannot do a good job if you don't intimately understand the sensory components of the product.
Mhm.
And that means really spending a lot of time with those products, right? So to me, that's the first thing. The second thing is to be data savvy, right?
Okay. Uh-huh.
Um, and to me, those are the kind of the two main things as a starting point, right? Be curious, to be curious about the product, and then be data savvy. In our teams, we have people who've come from the sensory field, people who enter the sensory field, through training, through coming to us. They had no sensory background, and they're
Yes.
thriving in our team because they have the right mindset. They're very curious about the product, and then they understand data, and then they also have good, other great soft skills.
Yes. You mentioned this a little bit, or just a small part of it, but how easy is to learn sensory? Let's say somebody who is interested in the field, but that person wants to learn sensory quick, how easy is that? Does they need time or not?
Um, I think there are really fantastic programs out there. Fast courses that that person could take
Mhm.
to get some basic knowledge of sensory. After Again, it's all about the person's curiosity, how much effort they're going to put into it,
Yes.
um, and then what kind of job they want to do in sensory, right? Do they want to be more, panel leaders, which is a
Mhm.
wonderful job, and I always would recommend if anybody wants to start in sensory, they should have an experience as
Right.
panel leaders. It's a wonderful way to really understand the product deeply, right, and get that foundational knowledge. Um, and or do they want to be more in forefront, working with the developers, the brands, and in that case they need to understand the information, be able to translate the information. Do they need to do more consumer research? And I do want to be more, into the data field. That, it's not the sensory field has different aspects, different kinds of jobs, right? So it kind of depends what they want to do. But I mean, it can take a couple of years to really be proficient in what you do, and we know that, right?
Yeah, it's important to have the knowledge, but the interest, as you mentioned, but also the skills of want to learn and
Hmm.
team working, I guess, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's not only I am an expert and I can do everything. No, that's not the
No,
idea, I guess.
yeah, no. It will take time. I think in our group when we have somebody new coming in, we tell them, it's going to take you 2 years to really get a clue exactly of what your job is all about.
Right.
So there's that expectation, right?
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Uh, what is your well, I know this is sometimes complicated, but what is your expectation of the sensory field? Do you think this is going to be a huge change? I'm asking this. I know we were thinking about the pandemic, but
Mhm.
without that exceptional change, do you expect something new in the couple years of the
Yeah, I mean, the
sensory?
big question is AI, right? How can the sensory field utilize AI? Is AI a threat to sensory scientists? Could the machine replace what we get from a panel, from our consumers? Are we ever going to be in that situation? Um, so that's kind of one aspect. I think data mining, big data, collecting
Right.
information, being able to kind of connect dots at a kind of more holistic sense. I
Uh-huh.
think it makes sense for us to continue to do that. To connect dots beyond, you know, purely the sensory aspects, but like, food and psychology. To me, it's a fascinating field. How how you what you do, what you eat, kind of impacts other things in your being, in your life. Um, Everything around. I know emotion has been a field has been explored quite a bit, but I feel like we could probably do more and continue to have this more holistic understanding of the consumers and how sensory kind of fits in that bigger picture.
Right. And all of that with planet conscience, right? I mean, no more waste, no more pollution, or try not to
Hmm.
pollute everything.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think in terms of sensory helping our experiences. Yeah, packaging.
Mhm.
As we age, having things that are more consumer friendly for older folks or easier to read.
Right.
already, already there. Um, yeah, I think there's a lot we can do there.
Nice. Do you have a paper or publishing or book that you want to recommend to the people who is attending into this chapter?
There's staple books in sensory that to me are still so, they're still the foundation. And I can't really name them all, but uh, sensory relation techniques, from Melgard, Civil, and Carr,
Uh-huh.
is a good one. There's a few books more food focused, from Michael O'Mahony or Hal McPhee, and that I remember reading, and with my younger my younger self, and seeing a lot of value in them.
Right.
And there's so many other so many other tools, so many other methodology that were developed more recently. I know, not sure I could name all the books and all, but it's whatever is going to help you answer your questions. Sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel constantly,
Right.
right? It's I feel like what really matters is understand what's the ask.
Correct.
And sometimes a kind of a simple, good old test will get you there, right?
Yes. Yeah, if you know the question, everything will flow. I mean, you can do research without question, but you don't know what to answer. So that you mentioned it, it's very important the question. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
nice. And well, this is for people who like me who likes wine but don't know much about the descriptors. Where can I start to learn about tasting a wine? I mean, is there like a experience or baby steps? Okay, start with this Lambrusco. I don't know. I'm just saying, or and then
Um,
move forward to this Malbec, or which
so
is
so
there a
so
roadmap?
what we see is that people who kind of want to kind of enter in the wine category, but they're not sure where to start. Sweeter wines is usually a good entryway. Like a Moscato is pretty sweet, but it's quite enjoyable, or kind of a sweet Riesling, or a white Zinfandel, something that's going to be very easy to drink, very fruit forward, and then kind of make your way up. When I say way up is, not that they're low in the totem pole, but kind of then try things that maybe have a bit less sweetness, and then maybe more mouthfeel. So, um, and it's a matter of compare and contrast.
There is
Taste.
no place that I can say, okay, I like this, and that. Which one do you recommend me? No, not yet, or there is something.
It's hard. I would have to kind of be like, okay, let me try this one.
Okay,
How does
okay,
it? How do you like it? Now try that one. What do you think? Right? And I'd be like, okay, you're more like, okay, this is where you are. So based on that, okay, well, try these other wines. They're kind of within the area that you told me you like,
right.
and see how you are you happy with that, and then we can go from there. But usually the entryway to wine category kind of is with sweeter products, and people usually tend to make their way to other
Okay,
styles. Or they stay in sweet styles and they're very happy with it, and it's fine.
but you need to experience it. I mean, okay.
Yeah. I don't think there is a path, you know.
Yes, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
there are multiple paths to get there. So it's hard for me to tell you, like, you get to follow those 5 steps and then
Yeah, yeah.
get it.
Okay.
It's
Thank you.
about trying.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh,
Uh, my final question is this. What if, let's say, we have or you have a time machine and you go back into the very first time you are about to do sensory
uh-huh.
and you have the opportunity to tell yourself something, what
So,
will be that?
that would be, ask yourself the so what. you know,
Okay.
so well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your time as well. It was really nice to speak with you again. And well, we need to finish this interview. Hopefully, we can continue it another time or maybe with a glass of wine during a conference. Why not?
A red
Uh,
wine.
of course. Uh, is there something you want to add?
Um, Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I mean, hopefully it showed through the interview. Sensory is just it's a wonderful field. It's a field that has so many different aspects that you can really have a fulfilling career in it. Again, is be curious about the product. Um, Being a sensory panelist is a wonderful job to have. So do consider that as you start your career, and even if you can stay there. It's a wonderful job to have throughout your career. I cannot do anything without good sensory panel leaders. Um, so I rely on them to give us good data. So yeah, and stay curious, um, and don't be afraid of data.
Right,
Data are fun.
of course. Totally agree. Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much, and see you then next time.
Okay, thank you.
A ustedes muchas gracias por vernos. Nos vemos en la siguiente ocasión de Diálogos Sensoriales. Y si les gustó, denle like y compartan. Si no, no digan nada. Nos vemos. See you. Thank you again. Chao, chao.